I'll be doing something a bit different today. Today I'll be showing off what I believe to be the most efficient production line for Satisfactory. This is every item from start to finish, or how I originally did it from finish to start. How I began this project is by getting these 4 items here and building backwards. Alongside that, I got every resource in their maximum amount inside the game. This, of course, does not. I have not included oil from wells, just usual oil, because screw getting oil from wells. That is a waste of time. As you can see here, I have every resource, including resources that come from thin air or are infinite, at least by power for this one. Now, what I mean by efficient is what I believe to be the best recipe, and the best recipe either a good ratio, the least amount of resources, and no floating point numbers. Now, as you can see, just by glancing at this, it is very messy, but all these numbers, and this here is counting the number of machines. This would be 40 particle accelerators. Every single one of these is a whole number, excluding 2, and this one here is the first one at 0.5, and this one here at 0.75. This is what I presume to be the best way to do it, is to get all of these as whole numbers. Additionally, to help this out, I exclude any recipes that have weird ratios or floating point numbers. For example, I believe it's the CDs. These things right here. I believe there is a recipe for this that has like 1.33 reoccurring output. I believe it's for this. I'm probably wrong, honestly. Other recipes such as for nuclear power, like this one and this one, the most efficiency, meaning the least amount of nuclear power to the uranium to nuclear power ratio is the best, meaning you get the most nuclear energy and electricity from the least amount of this rare material, uranium. It's a rare resource. And that includes the most rare, which is, of course, this one: bauxite, quartz, crude oil, uranium, and SAM. SAM by far being the most useful and most rare. As you can see, I've used all of it. This is not so much rare, but it is very useful nonetheless. Starting at some of the decisions I've made, none of these machines are overclocked in any way, shape, or form. I have not a single summer sloop in any of these machines. As you can see, all of these are at 100% overclock. Sorry, 0% overclock or underclock, meaning I have not used a summer sloop. And the reason why I do not like using summer sloops is because these things here are by far the best way to use summer sloops. The only other reasonable way to do it is to put the summer sloops at the very end of the production line in these 3 machines here, and this a couple of these 4th ones for your nuclear pasta, or in your Fixonium. And I'll get to that in a minute. That's the best way to do it because that will literally half the resource requirements all the way down the line. As you can see, none of these have summer sloops in them. Now, when building this, you start off with how much power you need, and that's what I have done. And of course, you start from the top and go back. And of course, the main theme of this is that all of these are whole numbers, meaning the ratio of this to the next one, to the next one, to the next one must be whole numbers. Now, this is very hard to do with uranium, especially using alternate recipes, so I have just used the best ones that I believe to be. This gives you a lot of power. This gives you about this production line will give you 1,000,000 megawatts. You have 180 there. You have 120, so 300, and then you have 360, and then you have 920 generators. There's a good reason for that. Of course, the one thing you should start with is the rarest material in the game, SAM ore, because you'll need as much SAM ore to be converted into trigons, to convert as much fixonium into fuel. Convert as much plutonium into fixonium as possible. That's the main thing this is used in. Of course, I have made extra because we need trigons for Mark 6 belts, and I have made an excess of them. And I've designed this whole setup so that the problem you'll run into when designing this is that if you want to convert as much if you want to get at least 1,000,000 megawatts, you must convert, and you want to convert as much of this into fixonium as possible, you will need to make a lot, and I mean a lot of dark matter residue, and a lot of these crystals, an insane amount of these crystals. Now, and nothing, and as you can see here, all the ratios are good enough so that there is no reoccurring. These are all mainly whole numbers. There's no 0.125 or 0.33 repeater. These are all fairly well balanced. Additionally, I think it's best because I've designed it so that you get resources that you need to build with, which is plates, concrete, some spare empty canisters, reinforced, you'll need wire, you'll need a bit of turbo fuel for yourself, and you will need quartz if you're building with signs. As you can see here, I probably could get more time crystals. This is actually a lot for Mark 5 belts. You shouldn't be using Mark 2 or Mark 4 belts anyway. It should just go 1, 3, 5 in basically every build. Now, of course, the reason why I think this is the most efficient is because I use leached. I do use the silica solution, and I do use the quartz solution, as these quite literally converting to other resources are by far the most efficient way to do it. From natural resource to other resources in this case, incredibly efficient way to do it. The most inefficient way to do it especially for crude oil, is to use plastic recipes. As you can see here, I do not make much plastic at all. I got a small amount of plastic going to empty canisters, small amount of plastic going to the one thing they're useful for is making these. And of course you'll need plastic for coated concrete, as you can see here, for coated concrete. Now, of course, there are some things that could be added to, like for instance, I haven't actually made anything for this because you do not need to use rods. Rods are by far the most inefficient way to make everything in the game. Now, of course, you probably saw up here, the number, this one here is so high. This number here is so high is because you need to make this much resin to make this much rubber and this much plastic, and this much heavy oil residue has just been fully transferred into fuel, and whatever's left over by ratio, because I've done this by ratio as well, from all the way down the line, all the way from here, from the start, all the way from here. As you can see, you need rocket fuel, you need regular fuel, which is the best method, this one right here. Not to mention, I've done the most efficient recipes, I think, for early production, such as these versatile frames. I'm just using screws, and then using screws again, and then I'm getting screws using the most efficient method by an absolute massive amount, is just this conversion right here, this alternate recipe. Of course, I'm using the most efficient recipe for everything here. This is, and what I mean by efficiency is if you split this up and you did another one, say pure, you would get, and I did 80, and I needed 8,000, so you put 8,800. You would require more raw iron ore for the same output of ingots. As you can see here, it's only 4,400, not 4,700. So it's all of these are the most efficient recipes from product to raw resources available. Of course, if you do not do this, these numbers here will explode. As you can see here, I only have 855 left in the whole Satisfactory world, because this is each raw resource limit in the whole world, and that's how much I have left. If you do not do every single resource efficiently, those numbers will explode. Now, when the one problem you'll run into is, of course, running out of SAM. As I said before, you want to start with as much trigons as possible, because what some people will fall for is to turn this into dark matter residue. This is a mistake. Do not ever do this. That is a waste of time. As it turns out, using this recipe right here, and yes, everything that can be sunk will be sunk, and everything that can't be sunk will be used up. So power shards that cannot be sunk will always be used up, so they do not build up in your base. This includes nuclear waste. All of the nuclear waste is used up, and if I cannot turn it into fixonium, I will sink the power, the actual rods themselves. Now, the reason why this number here is so high is because as it turns out, to get enough dark matter residue, to get enough fixonium, to get enough power to stay at this ratio, you need a lot. And the only way to do it is with these recipes that give you residue. As it turns out, if you scale up the building, if you scale up everything by ratio, eventually you will actually make more dark matter residue as a byproduct than you do than dark matter residue that you need for production. And this includes making these crystals because you need an absolute massive amount of dark matter residue to make these crystals, and these crystals go into the production of everything. But if you scale everything up, you will eventually make, as you can see, more dark matter residue than you consume. And you can, of course, turn that into this beautiful recipe right here and bin it. And this is all 100% efficient because of this ratio in this tolerance. Now, to have the reason why this is so high is, of course, because we are making a massive amount of power shards, and the power shards, of course, are made because we need so much dark matter residue, and and this is useful. This is actually very useful because you can turn this into power, and you can, of course, see what I've done here. You can leave some at the end, and you can, of course, use this ionized fuel for drones, which is what I'll be using it for. You can also use the turbo fuel as well for drones. This will give you a bit of leeway so that you're not stuck. As you can see, some of the other efficiency decisions I have made is by using cable. Using cable is by far the most efficient and the best way to make everything. You should be making everything out of cable, and the reason why is because of one beautiful cable recipe, and that is this one, quick wire and rubber. As you can see, I'm making a lot of cable, but if you do not use cable and you use something else for another recipe like it does with this one here, then all the other resources will explode. As again, if you keep going back, all these resources here will explode. Now, as you can probably tell just from looking at it, I do not use almost any iron ore at all. They've actually made it pretty useless, in my opinion. Like, you use it for plates, and you use it for a bit of manufacturing. Other than that, actual iron is pretty well useless. Of course, I use the most efficient recipe for conversions, as in converting fixonium, making fixonium. I'm using aluminium. This requires, of course, slightly higher aluminium production, which can only be done to a good ratio with this production line. As you can see here, it gives us a little bit left over. But you're always sacrificing one. You'll always use up all your SAM because it's impossible not to. They need to add way more. You're sacrificing one. Either you sacrifice your quartz to get better ratios for bauxite. As you see here, I use my quartz to a very good ratio to make silica, and a bit here as well. Believe it or not, this recipe to make silica is more efficient than this recipe to make silica because it also makes this as well. And this recipe, of course, helps me make my Aluminium. That's of course a sacrifice that I have to make at such a massive production line, meaning this is all mega builds. Most efficient recipe for diamonds has to be this one, otherwise you will use up all of your coal in the whole world and you will run out again. You have to use this, which means you have to make turbo fuel, but turbo's fuel is useful anyway, so why not? This is the most efficient recipe for dark matter crystals. You have to use this as again, you will not be able to scale up very well with your dark matter residue production if you do not use this recipe here. Other That's pretty much it. I do not know how to actually get this this design out to the world, but everything is built in columns, as you can see. These are all aligned. They were. They're all aligned. You can pause the video if you want to check. There's no way of getting around. They have not added an alternate recipe for turning this into nuclear pasta. That will always be a massive amount. That'll take up the majority of your copper. And for copper, you just used the regular copper design, as you can see here. No leached, because it's a worse ratio for product to fuel ratio. There could be in some improvements. For instance, you could add more of these per minute, which will go down the line, which won't be a half bad thing to do all the way down the line. You'll have to go from here to here to here. But yeah, you get about 1,000,000 megawatts from this power setup because you have this much. You have 360 of these, which I believe gives you like 700,000 or something. And then you have a bunch of these as well. And then, of course, you have all of your summer sloops, so you can just use them to make more of these bad boys. Anyway, feel free to leave any comments on how you think this should be improved. If you can match this level of whole numbers to everything else ratio, I will be impressed. Thank you very much for watching.